I patted him on the shoulder, and when he turned around, I hit him with everything I had. I struck from the tops of my boots, putting in all 205 pounds. I felt his nose crunch and blood flow, and when he raised his hands to his face, I punched him in the stomach and got a load off from him as he doubled over. Another blow to the side of the head and he collapsed to the ground. I thought about kicking his ass a half-dozen times, but then I thought, what the heck? He got the message. I turned to Darcy and said, I think I broke his nose. Maybe you can kiss him and everything will be fine. And then I turned and walked away from the woman who wore my wedding ring and the man who was my best friend. It was Darcy's sister's birthday party, and it was held at Barney's Roadhouse. We pushed a few tables together, drank and danced to the live band, and everyone had a great time. We had been there for a little over 2 hours when something caught my attention. My girlfriend Darcy was dancing with my best friend Mark, and while that in itself was nothing new, what caught my attention was the fact that his hand slid down her back and came to rest on her ass, and she didn't push it away or do anything that he did not say. Then I noticed Mark's leg pressed against Darcy's leg, and again she didn't do anything. By then I was interested in both of them, and I moved over so I could watch them while pretending to talk to the others at the table. The music stopped, and a few seconds passed before they realized it and pulled away from each other. They returned to the table, and although they sat on opposite sides of each other, 4 chairs apart, I noticed that they were constantly looking at each other. On the next song, I was dancing with Darcy, and hugging her, I asked, "Everything is fine?" "Yes." "Why?" "You seem a little distant tonight. It's as if your thoughts are somewhere else or you have something significant on your mind." "It's just your imagination, baby. I'm fine, honestly." We stayed on the dance floor for 3 songs and then returned to our table. A couple of minutes later, Mark asked Darcy to dance, and I couldn't take my eyes off them. They danced side by side again, and his hand ended up on her ass. Darcy must have said something this time because he quickly pulled his hand away and glanced quickly in my direction. Half an hour later, Darcy got up to go to the toilet, and about a minute later, Mark stood up and followed her. I saw enough that night to make me suspicious, so I waited a couple of minutes and then got up and headed to the toilet. Mark wasn't in the restroom, and since we wouldn't have passed each other if he had headed back to the table, that meant he must have gone out the back door. As I reached for the doorknob, I suddenly realized that if Mark and Darcy were up to something, my exit through the back door would alert them and give them a chance to split up and then tell me that they were just going outside to escape the cigarette smoke and get some fresh air. I walked back through the bar, out the front door, and then walked as quietly as I could around the building. As I came around the northeast corner of the bar, I saw them. They hugged each other and kissed. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't even hear me approaching them from behind. I had just finished putting all of Darcy's things that were in my apartment into trash bags when I heard someone knocking on the front door. The key inserted into the lock told me it was Darcy. I didn't look up from what I was doing when she came in, but I said, "You're just in time to get that shit out of here. I was just about to throw it in the trash." "Can we talk about this?" "No. I've seen enough tonight to know everything I need to know." "It wasn't what you think." "It doesn't matter, Darcy. I saw what I saw, and that was enough. You broke Mark's nose and dislocated his jaw. He got lucky. I should have kicked him half a dozen times and broken a couple of ribs. I've never seen you so cruel before. Sometimes it's good not to see anything. Now please just take your things and leave." "Please, Rob. I made a stupid mistake. I drank too much and wasn't thinking straight." "Yes? Well, it's good that I caught you making such a mistake before I married you, and not after." "You're welcome, Rob. It didn't mean anything, honestly. Once you said yes and put on my ring, you were supposed to be a single woman, and that only man was supposed to be me. You just showed me that I can't trust you. Just take your things and leave." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she began to remove her wedding ring. "Keep it," I told her. "I don't want this to remind me of you. If you keep it, Mark won't have to buy it for you. Consider this my wedding gift." She grabbed her 2 trash bags and headed for the door. She opened the door, turned to me and said, "I'm sorry, Rob. I love you. I really love you, and I didn't do what you think." And then she disappeared. She called me the next day and asked if I was ready to talk to her. I hung up. She tried half a dozen more times, but I always hung up on her. And eventually, she finally gave up. Over the next month, Mark made a dozen attempts to get me to talk to him, and I finally told him that if he came within arm's length of me, I would send him to the hospital for a month. It finally dawned on him, and he stopped calling. 8 months later, Darcy and Mark were married. I had to laugh when I received the invitation. Maybe I was supposed to be something old. As a geologist working for an oil company, I had to travel quite a bit, and some of the trips were long. Shortly after Mark and Darcy's wedding, I was sent on a trip to Alaska to explore the possibility of developing a new oil field. This forced me out of town for almost 11 months, and since I had no one to go home to, I spent the entire 11 months in the area. When I did have some free time, I went sightseeing in either Alaska or Canada. Did I think about Darcy on cold nights? Yes, I did it. I thought about her a lot. I loved her with all my heart, and I was sure that she felt the same towards me. We met by chance. Literally. I wasn't paying as much attention to my driving as I should have been, and I backed into her car in the parking lot. She wasn't around, so I wrote down my name and office address on a piece of paper and slipped it under her windshield wiper. 3 hours later, the receptionist called me and said that some woman wanted to see me. She says you're waiting for her. I checked my calendar and didn't see any appointments for that day, but I didn't have anything important to do, so I told Fran to send this woman to my office. 2 minutes later, my office door opened and the most beautiful woman I had ever seen walked in. If there is such a thing as love at first sight, that's what happened to me right then. "Mr. Ellison, I'm Darcy Miller, and I'm here to accept your offer." My suggestion? "I'm afraid I don't understand." "Oh, wasn't that the dinner invitation you left under my windshield wiper blade? Although I do think that crashing into my car is a bit of an extreme way to meet me." "Invitation to dinner? I figure it was probably just a way for me to contact you so you could give me your insurance information. But I saw the look on your face when I walked in, so I decided to treat it like an invitation to dinner." It was all too fast for a guy like me, but I didn't lose my brain, so in the end, I managed to pull myself together enough to say, "Are you free tonight?" She was single, and 3 days later, when I walked her out the door after a date, she kissed me so hard that my knees went weak, and then she grabbed me by the tie and dragged me into her apartment. "I don't know if you felt the same way I did when I walked into your office," she said. "But the look on your face said you could do it, and I don't want to wait another dozen days while you try to force yourself to get me into bed." We lay there with our arms around each other, relaxing in the warm aftertaste of great lovemaking, and I asked, "What size ring are you wearing?" "My ring size? Why do you need to know that?" "I want to buy your engagement ring in the morning, and I need to know the size." "Are you proposing to me?" "Hey, you're the one who doesn't believe in wasting time. I'm just following your lead." 5.5. We set a date, but before it came, it was Barney's party. It wasn't until I got home that I learned that Mark and Darcy's marriage didn't last very long. It turns out that Mark had a hidden side that no one knew about. He was cruel. After he sent Darcy to the hospital emergency room for the 5th time, she decided she'd had enough and hit him over the head with a cast-iron frying pan, and while he lay in hospital with a broken cheekbone, she moved out and filed for divorce. I learned all this while having dinner with my cousin Richard and his wife Day. "Are you going to call her?" asked Dee. "Good God, no. Why are you even asking?" "Because in a way you are responsible for what happened between the two of them. How the hell could this happen? I haven't even been here for 11 months. Hell, I left town before they even got back from their honeymoon. Every fight they had was about you. Come on, Dee. They both disappeared from my life for a good 8 months before I went to Alaska. How the hell could I become part of their problems?" "Mark is a loser, Rob. You either didn't pay attention or you accepted it because he's been your best friend since 3rd grade. But he's a loser. He can't hold down a job and can't do anything right. And every time he came home after getting fired or quitting or screwing something up, Darcy would shake her head in disgust and say something like, "And because of you, I lost Rob." The last time he sent her to the emergency room, they were at the Elks, and he had just lost another job. It's unclear whether he resigned or was fired, but he was whining about the foreman having a grudge against him, and Darcy told him to stop whining like a child and become a man for a change. Mark made a witty remark that she wouldn't recognize the man if someone bit her on the ass, and she said, "That's where you're wrong. I had a real man once, and I ruined everything. Are you coming at me and Rob again? On his worst day, he was 5 times better than you could be on your best day." "You bitch!" Mark shouted, and hit her from behind with such force that she fell back in her chair and hit her head on the edge of a nearby table. This knocked her out, and she was rushed to the hospital. 2 days later, she hit him with a frying pan. From what I've heard, she hasn't been on a single date since she moved out and filed for divorce. This is all very interesting, but I think I won't say hello to Darcy. Have you ever made a mistake, Rob? I did some stupid things, but the thing about mistakes is that you have to learn from them. What you have to learn is how not to make the same mistake again. Darcy was a mistake, and I will not repeat it. And I wasn't kidding. I miss Darcy, and not a week went by without me thinking about her 6 times. I still carried her picture in my wallet, but I had no intention of seeing Darcy or even talking to her on the phone. She was history, and although I couldn't get her out of my mind, she was going to remain history. But sometimes what you want or don't want to do just doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. It had been a long day at the office, and I stopped by Ernie's Sports Bar and Grill to have a couple drinks and relax. I went to Ernie's because I was dating Juanita, the waitress. We had something for about a month. Nothing that would lead anywhere, just good bed buddies. I was sitting in a booth sipping a beer and watching the Rockies-Giants game on the big screen TV when Juanita placed another beer in front of me. A compliment from the lady at the end of the counter. I looked at the end of the counter and almost said, "That's not a lady, that's just Darcy." But I stopped myself. But I didn't give up on beer either. Darcy took the fact that I didn't refuse the beer as an invitation to join me, and a couple of minutes later she slid into the seat opposite me. "How are you doing, Rob?" "I was fine." "What was it like in Alaska?" "Cold." She was silent for a couple of seconds and then asked, "Have your feelings towards me softened at least a little?" "In what sense?" "Do you still hate me?" "I never hated you, Darcy." "Was I disappointed in you?" "Yes, I was like that, but I never hated you." "I'm sorry about what happened, Rob. I'm really sorry. I have truly done some stupid things in my life, and Mark is at the top of the list. But I swear to you, Rob, that there was never anything between me and Mark other than what I thought was innocent flirting. I didn't know that Mark saw it any differently. You know Mark. He's always been a touchy person, and yes, he did put his hand on my butt a couple of times, but I know you saw it and didn't say anything. It didn't hurt anything. Mark was just Mark. He was the same as he always was. That's not what I saw in the parking lot, Darcy. You never let me tell you what happened, Rob. You just assumed the worst and turned your back on me. How could what I saw be anything other than what I saw myself? I got up and went to the toilet, and when I came out, Mark was waiting for me in the corridor. He said he needed to talk to me about something and asked me to go outside where it was less noisy. When we went outside, he told me that I was making a mistake by marrying you, that you might not be able to love me as much as he does. He told me that I should break up with you and be his girlfriend. I laughed at him and said he was crazy. He grabbed me, pulled me into his arms, and kissed me. And this is where I was stupid. I kissed him back. I have no excuse, except that I drank a lot and it was a boost to my ego to know that he wanted me. Also, what is a kiss? And then you showed up and my life turned to crap. You married him 8 months later. You might be surprised how many friends you have. You kicked me out, so rumors spread that I had done you wrong, and no one wanted anything to do with me. Mark wanted me, but no one else cared about me. So when he asked me to marry him, I agreed. Another stupid mistake. I sent you an invitation in the vain hope that you would show up and stop the wedding. How would I do this? When it came to the part where the priest asks if there is anyone who knows why the wedding shouldn't take place, I was hoping that you would be there to speak up and say, yes, I'm against it, because she loves not him, but me. But you didn't. That would be true, Rob. Even when I said yes, I knew that I loved you and always will. Deep down, I knew I was making a mistake by marrying Mark. I should have turned and ran out of the church when they got to the "you, Darcy, take Mark" part of the ceremony, but I didn't have the courage. I didn't lie when I told you I loved you the night you threw me out of your apartment. So why are you telling me about this, Darcy? I want you back in my life, Rob. Even if we never go back to the way things were, I need you to be a part of my life, at least as a friend. As I sat looking at her and listening to her, I thought about some of the things she said. Mark was a touchy guy, and he and Mark flirted a lot, but Darcy flirted with a lot of guys. It was just in her nature. This kiss bothered me. The image of Mark and Darcy hugging each other stuck in my head. Suddenly I realized that it wasn't the kiss itself that bothered me. These were hands. It was because of the way their arms were wrapped around each other. I got carried away once or twice, especially at Christmas parties when there was a chance to play under the mistletoe, but I never hugged the women I kissed. I've never hugged them the way Darcy and Mark hugged each other. On the other hand, did I attach too much importance to this? Was it really clear to me what exactly I was seeing? I was angry and furious. In my anger, did I see more in it than there actually was? Could everything have happened as Darcy claimed? Darcy sat there waiting for me to say something, but what could I say? I knew I still loved her. I knew I missed her. But the question was whether I dared to take the risk. This kiss and this hug will always be with me. The only thing I knew for sure was that I didn't know what to do. So I chose the easiest way out. You've given me something to think about, and while I'm not entirely sure I'll ever be able to bring myself to accept your version of what happened, I'll think about it. Maybe I'll call you in a couple of days. I saw the disappointment on her face, but she said, "At least that's something. It's more than what I had when I came here tonight and saw you sitting here. My cell phone number remains the same. Feel free to call me at any time of the day or night. I'm serious, Rob. I still love you, and I really want you back in my life." She stood up and left me to sit and watch her leave. I was waiting for Juanita to get home from work and was driving her home when she said, "Should I start looking for a new sex buddy?" "Why are you interested?" "I saw the way you looked at that woman who joined you in your booth. Moreover, I saw the way she looked at you. She's just someone I once knew." "Bullshit, Rob! There was something strong going on between the two of you, and it was obvious to anyone who could read the signs. Be honest, honey, how much time do I have?" "I'm not going anywhere." She paused and just looked at me for a bit and then said, "Yes, you're leaving, honey. You just don't know it yet." Once in her apartment, she quickly undressed and said, "Hurry up, honey. I want as much as possible before you leave." "Stop saying that." "I'm not going anywhere," I said, and wondered why she was so sure of this. As I undressed, I also wondered why Juanita and I had never interacted other than as fuck buddies, and almost immediately realized that I already knew the answer. She was fun. She was a sexy-looking lady and loved sex, but I just wasn't into her. I liked her. I really liked her, but I didn't love her. As I drove, I wondered why I started thinking about Darcy while having sex with Juanita. I've never done this before. Since I left Darcy, I have shared my bed with half a dozen women, and not once have thoughts of Darcy invaded my mind. Then, as Darcy returned to my thoughts, I began to think about what Darcy said earlier at Ernie's. Was it true? Could I believe her? In my anger that night, did I make what I saw mean more than it actually was? If we were to get back together, would I always wonder, and as a result, always be suspicious of her? That's what it really came down to. Trust. That's what a relationship requires. Trust. A relationship couldn't work if every time you were apart you wondered what the other person might be doing. It wouldn't work if every time your significant other came home late. You'd wonder where she was and what she was doing. It might not work if the other one called and canceled the date, leaving you wondering what he was doing instead, and perhaps with whom. This question was on my mind as I thought about Darcy and what she had told me. Could I trust her? Even as I asked myself this question, I knew there was only one way to find out. I slept the usual exhausted sleep, as always after an evening spent with Juanita. I stopped at Bob's Big Boy for breakfast on the way to work, and when I got to my office, I picked up the phone, called Darcy, and asked her to meet me at Barney's Roadhouse at 6. She said she would be there. I was already sitting at the table when she came in, and I saw the look of hopeful anticipation on her face as she approached me. As soon as she sat down, I got straight to the point. "So what do you want, Darcy? Meet from time to time?" "That would be great, Rob, but you know what I want. I want you back in my bed where you belong. No obligations. Dinner and dancing would be nice, but the point is, I want you back in my bed." "So you're suggesting a friend with benefits relationship?" "Call it what you want, Rob, but I need you back in my life." "No obligation?" "None. What is a good time to call you this week?" "There's no time like now, Rob. My apartment, your apartment, motel, your back seat, or mine. But now, right now, is the right time." I threw a 10 on the table, stood up, and followed Darcy out of the bar. I have no idea how this will all turn out. Everything will depend on whether I can learn to trust her again. It may take some time for this to happen, if it happens at all. But we're both young, so we have time.
Thanks for hanging out and listening. If you liked the story, hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Make sure to check out our other wild tales right here on the end screen. Catch you in the next story.